Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Vish, a special Tuesday edition of the Vish Show, because I had the day off yesterday, and we weren't necessarily going to go today, but so many people were like, "You gotta go. You gotta bring Vish out." I was like, "Of course, you got to give the people what they want." So, Vish, we've been talking all day, and he's got a lot in his mind. Basically, let's look at it this way: Kyle Shanahan didn't lie. He said he canceled OTAs, so we canceled OTAs, and he explained exactly why. And Vish wants to go back and revisit his rationale. So, Vish, why don't you take it from there?
Yeah, honestly, I've seen a lot of people argue about this. I don't give a damn whether he canceled it or whether they took it away from him, because those things to me are immaterial, honestly.
Yeah,
I think we can argue about whether he lies or not, and it makes good conversation for now. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make an impact. Where my ears perked up when I heard him talk about we canceled it and we felt we had enough practice time is the number one issue that the San Francisco 49ers have had under Kyle Shanahan, and probably the most important thing in regards to how well they do next year, the injury issue.
Yes.
Last season and this offseason, frankly, I think you were the reporter that asked the question to him about the injury specifically, and he said last season was a one-off example because of their lack of practice time. You have to play football to get into football shape, and he felt like they didn't have enough practice time in the offseason. So now I'm confused that he thinks they have enough practice time in the offseason and he's canceling an entire week of practice because last season's issue was that you didn't have enough practice time. That's where I get a little scared, because this injury issue thing is something we've debated about ad nauseum. I don't know any solutions to it. I don't know the problems to it. I don't know anything about this. This is just something I try to pick up and learn on the people who are informed on the subject. I certainly am not. If you ask me how to solve the injury issue, I have no clue. Frankly, up till the last couple of years, I thought injuries were just a matter of luck in the NFL. And frankly, 75% of me still believes that. But when you have a 10-year sample size where one team is more injured than the other 31 teams in the NFL, then I start to say there's something a bit more here than luck. And then I heard the Will Blackmon conversation, and I thought maybe you were onto something where you go to a really good training staff and pick up somebody from their team and try to apply their methods to your team. And I started looking into that. But guess what? Will Blackmon was a Seattle Seahawk in 2013. That training staff that he waxed poetically about, Pete Carroll let go in 2019. He fired them all completely. So then I was like, okay, I'm back at square one. I don't know what's going on here. When people ask me when I go on streams, how do I answer this question? Then I heard Kyle Shanahan talk about it in a press conference, and he said, look, we didn't have enough football time. I was thinking in my head, I was like, wow, this is such a bad excuse, because the same offseason you had, 31 other teams in the NFL had that exact same offseason, and they weren't hit by the injury bug as much as you. But then I was like, okay, that's a fair excuse. Now we get to this season, and you have an opportunity to have the full offseason, and let's say you elected. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say you elected not to have that set of practices. Why did you elect not to have that practice? I thought you needed to get the players into football shape. I thought that was the idea. The NFL is already pretty rigid about the practice program and the amount players are allowed on the field. There's no more two-a-days.
It's already restrictive.
Right. It's all restricted. So, I mean, you hear players like coaches like Bill Belichick, like people compared this to like Kyle Shanahan pushing the envelope like Bill Belichick. I don't think Bill Belichick would ever push the envelope to not have to have 1 week less of football practice than everybody else. I think he would push the envelope to have 1 week more of football practice than everybody else. So that to me was a little concerning. Just the whole situation, the way it went down is concerning. And then the other aspect of it is the reporter that, and I'm going to be a little facetious here when I say this, but the reporter that said that the Niners elected to cancel their week of practice, I was told this entire offseason is untrustworthy. I mean, he said Mac Jones was going to be drafted by the 49ers. He said when they traded up, they had Mac Jones. Like Adam Schefter, come on. He's
last month,
untrustworthy,
Niner fans were all saying you can't believe Adam Schefter. Now it's like, well, Adam Schefter said it. You can't. He's the best.
Right? So I'm joking, obviously. I'm being facetious, but the point to me here is that this entire he is absolutely the best. He doesn't miss. No. But the point to me here is that I'm so confused with this situation. I'm so confused because the messaging is just so mixed to me. And I don't really care, whether they get fined or all those things. It's not my money or anything. All I care about is, are you finding a way to solve this injury issue? And you told me, the fan, that to solve this injury issue, you needed a full offseason and you need to get people in football shape. And now you elect to not have 1 week of practice because everybody's already in football shape, but 31 other teams aren't going to benefit from having that extra week of practice. I don't know what's going on. I didn't really care for the lying. I didn't care for the reporting on this. I didn't care for the semantics. All I care about is the injury issue. And I don't know if they have found a solution. I don't know if they haven't. Just the messaging seems a little bit awkward to me.
It's like if you're talking to your kid and he got a C on his math test. And you're like, well, what happened, man? How did you get a C on this? He's like, well, I only had like a night to study for this. No, I only have one night. I'm like, all right, fair enough. That's tough. And then the next time he has 3 weeks to study for it, but he only spends a week studying for it. And again, he gets a C. It's like, well, what did you do with your extra time? What? I thought you needed extra time. I thought that was the issue.
Right. Did he not say explicitly multiple times that this offseason is what caused their injury issues? You have the full offseason. I correct me if I'm wrong. I don't recall him canceling a week of OTAs in 2017 or 2018 or 2019, to be frank.
Yeah, but it's funny. He said that, and then I don't know at what point in the timeline he said that, but then he has the spring practices this year, and players start going down. So that's kind of testing his theory.
But then he also said, because you asked explicitly, right? The last kind of thing that happened, you asked explicitly about guys getting injured in practice, and he said it's football. This is what happens, all of that.
True.
But then it looks like it did scare them because then they wanted to not have practice anymore. And I thought your girlfriend analogy was pretty exact because I do think there is a little bit of that in the situation. But honestly, again, I don't think
which means that most likely it wasn't really a choice to cancel these OTAs, most likely. But we don't know. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, let's just give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't think it really matters. I want to know in comparison to the injury issue because I feel like the question's been asked. It's very surface level. Is Kyle lying? Is Kyle doing this? Why aren't they doing? But to me, the main question is the one thing that's going to hold this team back this year, I think we've all agreed, is injuries, right? I think we've all looked at this team and said they're stacked on paper. They have a great defense. They have a very talented offense. Kyle Shanahan's a phenomenal play caller, but the 12 to 20 core players that they're relying upon have had history of missing time in multiple different seasons over the last few years with injuries. I mean, you go down the list of their secondary. I mean, all 5 guys, I would say, all 5 starters outside of Emmanuel Mosley, the 4 guys, their 4 best players in their secondary are all guys who've missed multiple seasons with multiple different injuries. Their defensive line, you go down the list, there's some injury question marks, especially with their best player, Bosa. Their offensive line, their tight end, their best player, one of their best players, George Kittle, there's an injury question mark. Their receiving room, there's an injury question mark. There's a running back room. So the entire idea with this organization is that if they're healthy, they're going to be phenomenal. And so none of us know the answer on how to solve this issue. I don't even think the 49ers know the issue. But the messaging they give us is that they do know the solution, and these were the reasons why it didn't work out in the past few years, and this is why it's different this year. Well, if it's different in that way, then why aren't you taking advantage of why it's different?
Yeah, that's the main question right there. Absolutely. So I guess we'll have to see what the last thing I wanted to say about this subject is I feel like before the 49ers, it was the Chargers. I don't know if you guys remember, but the Chargers used to be the team that always looked good on paper in July and August, but you knew they were going to have some weird, bizarre injury thing and finish like 8-8 at best. And that was them for a long time. And the explanation was, well, why? What's going on with the Chargers? And the explanation was basically like, I don't know, they're just not a really good franchise. They're kind of a cheap, rinky-dink franchise, and this is the kind of thing that would happen to a franchise like that. And I'm not saying the Niners are that, but the longer it lingers, the more you question, like, what is going on there? Are they really pouring all their resources into figuring this out?
I mean,
that's it. Yeah.
I can't answer that question because if they have to be, right?
Right.
If they're committed to winning, the thing that's holding them back, and it can't be like, it can't be the Bears situation, when Cody Park, he double doinked the field goal against the Eagles. Now it's a circus show and we try out kickers and we act like there's nothing else wrong with our football team besides the kicker. It can't be that, right? You can't just act like, injuries are the only thing holding us back. You have to find ways to get better on the football field with schematically everything. And clearly the 49ers aren't being like the Bears. They're going through all of that. But they also have to do whatever they can to fix this because, honest to God, I don't know what the solution is. Again, I'm someone who does believe that there is a bit of luck involved with injuries. But this is a 10-year sample size where they're amongst the worst teams in the league in terms of their injuries on the effect of their win total. I mean, you've talked about that graph. I think you spent an entire 2 or 3 days just talking about the injury issue in that particular graph that came out. And so it's got to be solved. And as a fan, this is not me talking as someone who's analyzing something on here with you. I'm talking just solely as a fan. It's disconcerting when he says that the problem for us last year is that we didn't have a full offseason, and then this year he volunteers not to have the full offseason. What's going on?
Yeah, and one thing you said in there was, are they committed to winning? It's a fair question when this is a franchise that's had 4 winning seasons since 2003, and these issues are popping up. And I think we assume they are, but it's basically the burden of proof is on them to show it. And that's what we'll leave it at that. We got a question on something totally different from Lucas Otts. Should the Niners pursue N'Keal Harry? What do you think, Vish?
All depends on the price for me personally. If you can get N'Keal Harry for a 6th or 7th round pick, I say why not? Because it's just another talented body that you throw into the mix in terms of trying to compete for this receiver 3 job, because it is a bit of a question mark. I do think he's a better fit for what the 49ers do than what the Patriots are looking for on offense. I think the thing that'll help him a lot is I don't think the Niners will ask him to be an outside receiver. I think they'll look to move him into the slot. And there's Juwan Jennings fits this profile. N'Keal Harry's more talented than him. Mo Sanu was this guy for Kyle. And that's kind of who N'Keal Harry is.
He was kind of compared to Juju Smith-Schuster coming out of college.
A little bit,
who does a lot of
I would say maybe Juju's a bit more explosive as an athlete. Sure. I think Mo Sanu in Atlanta, in terms of his ability to separate, is probably on par with where N'Keal Harry is. But if it's a 6th or 7th round pick, I say why not? Because the last thing we want to be doing is we've all identified this problem, and I hate when this happens. We identify a problem with the 49ers. They don't address it. They don't address it. They don't address it. We put our faith into Juwan Jennings and Kevin White and River Craycraft, and they end up being, to quote Denny Green, they are who we thought they were. And Debo gets hurt week 5, and now the 49ers have a dire receiving room. They have nobody there. They have nobody reliable there. So I think that N'Keal Harry is very talented. There's a reason he was a 1st-round pick. Maybe he got a little overdrafted, but I think the change of scenery could do him some good, and I think he would be a good big slot for the 49ers.
And from what I understand, according to what I've heard, the Niners had him ranked ahead of Debo Samuel on their draft board, and they would have taken Harry had he been available, and there's a reason that Harry was drafted ahead of Debo, because I think the Niners weren't the only team that had Harry ahead of them. I think the Niners wanted to work Harry out, and he said, no thanks. I know I'm going in the 1st round. And I think if he hadn't gone to the Patriots, he would have gone to the Cardinals in round 1. I think the Niners maybe even considered moving up for him. So, look, it doesn't mean that they still feel the same way about him now that they did. He hasn't played that well. He's had a concussion. He's had injuries. I think you're absolutely right about his fit in the slot. He could also play flanker opposite Ayuk if Debo Samuel were to get hurt. He's probably not as good as Debo, but they're different. And he can do a lot of the gadget stuff that Debo and Ayuk do. He'd be a pretty good fit. For a 6th-round pick, yeah. How about this, though? How about for Jimmy, straight up?
Why would the Patriots want Jimmy?
I think they would take Jimmy. I think the Patriots would take Jimmy and restructure his deal. I do think they would. I don't think they're as committed to Cam Newton.
They don't have the money, and if they're not committed to Cam Newton, that's fine because they drafted a quarterback 15th overall, and they have their Jared Stidham. Jared Stidham was supposed to be the guy to replace Tom Brady. And they also have the guy who just, whenever he's in need of a job, New England always comes through for Brian Hoyer and makes sure that he's employed. So to me, they're sitting kind of pretty. Well, what benefit would they have?
You wouldn't do Harry for Garoppolo? You don't think the Patriots would?
Well, I wouldn't do it if I was the Niners either. That's horrible value for a guy you believe is a starting quarterback. They get a
first-round pick sort of for him.
Yeah, that's horrible. That is awful. That's like the AJ Jenkins, John Baldwin trade, like first round pick, but they're both.
I just have a feeling that the Patriots aren't going to offer the 49ers more than a 6th or 7th round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo anyway, and that most other teams that would offer a trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, he would veto. So I feel like the Niners, I don't know what Jimmy's value really is to them. And in a sense, Harry might be the best they could do.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think New England would be interested in Jimmy anymore.
See, that's the problem.
I think once they drafted Mac Jones, it's over.
Possible.
And I'm going to be honest with you because I don't want to be 20/20 hindsight about this. I thought this before the draft. If the 49ers drafted Mac Jones, he would be an upgrade over Jimmy. So to me, they have a better quarterback on a cheaper deal.
True. Only reason I thought he could be a destination is because it seems like Bill Belichick loves him like a son. I mean, I've heard Belichick talk about him. It's like listening to Kyle talk about Kirk Cousins, but
yeah. But
even more so.
Here's the difference. And Belichick is the only one I would say in the NFL who's this ruthless. He gets rid of the players he allegedly loved.
True.
Like, he loved Willie McGinnis. Goodbye, Willie McGinnis. He loved Lawyer Malloy. Goodbye, Lawyer Malloy.
But there's also a class of players that he gets rid of and brings back.
He doesn't bring them back on a $25 million deal. Hey,
no.
Jamie Collins.
No, they would have to extend it and bring it way down.
So, you know what I think would happen? I think would happen?
What?
If you want to bring up the Jamie Collins situation, that's the situation that the Niners straight up cut Jimmy and they signed him for almost nothing. That's more likely. All right. But he's not giving up assets.
You're right. Jerry Morphin says the Niners have a better record with Jimmy, but when he's injured, I believe starters have also been injured. Has a backup quarterback had the full starters? Good point. Not really.
No,
not really.
And I think we're gonna talk about this a bit later, in terms of the 49ers star players and their lack of reliability. But I do think when you look at the backup situation, even though Nick Mullins was pretty bad in a lot of different football games last year, I do think that they could have made the playoffs if George Kittle and Deebo Samuel played in all those games.
I agree. And the reason 2019 was the outlier is basically because the quarterback position didn't get injured. I mean, they had a lot of injuries in 2019.
Right.
There's been a lot of injuries on this team 8 years in a row. The difference was that they had stability at quarterback, which is the most important position. So,
and to be fair, 2019, the schedule kind of worked itself out for them where they were already a really, really good football team. And like the injury period, week 4 Cleveland was when everybody really went down. You had Juszczyk go down, McGlinchey go down, a bunch of people go down. But they played a lot of teams they blew out without those guys with Brunskill and stuff. So it kind of worked out for them that way, I think, too.
True. All right, let's move on. Still Kyle, though. Kyle Shanahan was the talk of the weekend. First, he dunked on Adam Schefter so hard. Windmill, reverse 360 in his face, Adam Schefter. And then he wasn't done. He just wanted to break the internet one more time with the viral video of him. First shot, apparently, according to Joe Staley, hitting a pizza oven from across the street down in like La Jolla or Del Mar. And you had epiphany. I feel like this video kind of put Shanahan's entire personality in perspective for you, did it not?
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit. So first, the video was pretty sick, right? It was pretty cool. He's got his shades on. He's got a sick hat on. I mean, he's got a great hat collection, by the way. Big fan of his hat collection. Yeah. And he's wearing some. He's sporting a little dad bod, but he's got some nice, cool swim trunks on, and he's ready to go. He's eyeing it. He looks all focused, and then he steps up. I mean, his throwing motion looked a little funny. I'd love to see some quarterbacks break down his throwing motion. The ball definitely looked like it wasn't spinning as a spiral. It was wobbly in there, but he stepped up and he put it right on, and he was all hyped up. But my epiphany was that like the reason. So I've been accused of liking Kyle Shanahan too much. And you know what? I think it's a fair accusation because I'll readily first admit, like, I do like Kyle Shanahan too much. Like,
I saw you tweeted that he's your favorite member in the organization. I saw you tweet that.
He's my favorite member in the organization. He's my favorite coach I've ever had in coaching for the 49ers, like observing. So by far, both of those two things. My epiphany was on why I like him so much.
Yes.
He's my age. It's a 40-year-old man who acts like a 20-year-old.
Yes, he does.
That like, I was just thinking in my head, how many 40-year-old men would be sitting on a roof trying to chuck a football from one roof to another? I was just thinking because obviously I'm 21 years old. My only example to look upon this is my parents. There's no way my father is thinking that the best idea when he's 40 years old, is married with 3 kids, or he has 2 kids, but 3 kids, is to throw a football all the way across from one roof to another. He's thinking more about the risk, like what Joe Staley mentioned. He's thinking about those type things, like, oh, I could hit a kid. Oh, I might break something. Oh, this is like not the most responsible thing to do. But me, on the other hand, I'm hanging out with my friends. We're having a good time. Everybody's chilling. You know, we see a football. Yeah, that's something stupid like that. That's something we might do. And hey, Jesse, then I'm not saying anything then. But my point is, I that was kind of my epiphany. Like, he's super cool. Like, for a 40-year-old guy, he's really a cool 25-year-old. And I think that's like, I don't mean this as saying it as a derogatory thing, because I think it's part of why I look at him and say, wow, he's so cool.
And part of why he relates so well to his team.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's why he gets along so well with his players. Because he's really relatable. Like Emmanuel Sanders talked about it, right? Emmanuel Sanders came from Denver with Vic Fangio, who I'm assuming Vic Fangio is as old school as it gets. Grant, you've been around him. He seems to be a pretty old school guy, right?
Yeah.
Very traditional, regimented, structured, very like that. And then he said he walked in and he sees the head coach wearing Yeezys and blasting music and all that. And it changes the entire thing because it's like, wow, I'm chilling with a friend, but we're also going to be really good at playing football together and all of that.
It's like we speak the same language.
Right.
We speak the same language, yeah.
So I understand like now why players like him so much. I just thought it was odd. I'm going to be honest with you. I just thought it was odd because, one, I don't think we'll ever see any – like, I think the furthest we'll see Cliff Kingsbury go is with the house and chilling and all of that. And then McVay said that he got sideline passes. He asked McVay for a sideline pass for a European model he met before their Week 16 game on the Flying Coach podcast. McVay said he called him up the night before the game and asked for a sideline pass so he could bring her on the field. I think that's as far as Kingsbury would go. I think that's as far as McVay would go. I don't think we'll see any other head coach in the NFL attempting to chuck a football from one ceiling to another. Frankly, I don't think we'll see many quarterbacks even trying to do something like that.
You know who else would have done it? And this kind of reminds me of, and I think what we're basically saying with Kyle Shanahan, he's a little bit of a case of arrested development in a nice way. But you know who else was? Jim Harbaugh.
Oh, 100%.
Like if Kyle Shanahan's 25, Jim Harbaugh was 12. Jim Harbaugh was 12. Like everything was like a competition for Jim Harbaugh. Like who can get to the, you know what I mean?
Sorry, go ahead. My bad.
No, go ahead.
No, but it goes beyond that, right? Because like at least Kyle Shanahan carries himself like the adult in the room when he comes to pressers and when he's shaking other coaches' hands. He carries himself with the utmost professional.
Jim was way younger. Jim had middle school tendencies.
I'm going to be honest with you. I was in middle school when Jim Harbaugh was the coach of the 49ers. Yes. He answered questions, like any question he didn't like, the way I would snap at like my parents if they said something to me like you didn't like. Like, why did you do bad on the test? Because I did so. Could you have done better?
Right, exactly.
Well, Jim Harbaugh.
The social graces of a 13-year-old.
My God.
Jim, I love you. But yes, so it's funny to think of the Niners having these coaches who are kind of stuck in childhood a little bit. It's definitely one of the reasons that Harbaugh related so well to his players, and I think Kyle as well. But at the same time, you watch, you're like, this is a little different than most of the other coaches I've seen.
So one thing I will say, and I think that's why I think Kyle has lasted a little better, is because I think Kyle comes across as just cool, and you want to hang out with him. Jim Harbaugh is the guy that gets annoying after a little while. Like, yeah, he's pretty
Like,
cool.
dude,
And then he's like,
enough.
dude, we don't want to be friends with you anymore. Like, you're just too much. You're just too much.
That's fair. All right, let's switch it up. Jerry Morphin says, do we just have way too many injury-prone players? All right, let's get into that topic. Let's jump down to the topic we had. We're going to come back to a couple other ones. But the biggest difference between the 49ers and the Rams, Vish and I have been talking the last couple of weeks about how the 49ers really are, one move away. Just getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo's contract. If they can do that, their salary structure is fantastic, and they're one of the best.
Way better than the Rams.
Way better than the Rams, ironically, their highest paid player this year is Jared Goff, not even on the team. So I've made that point a lot, and Vish is like, okay, I hear you, but the Rams are still going to be really good this year, and I don't think you're understanding why. So let's explain the biggest difference between the 49ers and the Rams. Or how about Vish explains it?
Yeah, to me, the reason why I think I wouldn't say I'm more bullish on the Rams team entirely, because I think the Niners do have a higher ceiling when all is said and done. I think top to bottom, they just have a bit more depth in their roster. I think the biggest difference is I think the Rams' best players are reliable. I think that's the biggest difference. And that's why when you look at their defense and you look at the people they lost, they have two guys that make an entire unit of their defense way better. Aaron Donald and three different guys is an excellent defensive line. That's just how good he is. And when Aaron Donald plays 16 games a season, every single season, then you can afford to let Michael Brockers go. And you can afford to bring in A'Shawn Robinson from Detroit, because you know that you have the one guy that's going to make everybody better. And that's the same thing with their secondary. When you have a cornerback like Jalen Ramsey that can cover in the slot, that can line up as a safety, that can cover outside, and it doesn't matter who he's guarding. He's going to do the best job in the NFL on that guy, whether it's Tyreek Hill, whether it's DK Metcalf, whether it's George Kittle, whether it's Travis Kelce. He's going to do the best possible job in coverage on that guy. It makes it easy for, a Darius Williams to burst onto the scene as this good corner. A Jordan Fuller, a 6th-round pick from Ohio State as a safety, looked like a very, very good starting caliber safety. Same thing with a Taylor Rapp, he's had some tough moments, especially the Emmanuel Sanders play, but he's overall a solid player. Yeah. And, they're going to miss John Johnson, but you can afford to lose John Johnson because you have Jalen Ramsey, who makes things that much easier for most of your defense. And I think that's the big difference to me. Like, we saw a case of this with the 49ers actually last year. Their defense remained top 5 in the NFL in spite of losing Nick Bosa, in spite of losing Dee Ford, in spite of losing DeForest Buckner, in spite of losing all these players. Why? Because Fred Warner was healthy, Jason Verrett was healthy, Jimmy Ward was healthy. It didn't matter who they plugged in around these guys. Greenlaw played some. Al Shire played some. The defensive line at times was Givens, Jordan Willis, Deion Jordan, all these guys, and it didn't matter because Fred Warner was the guy. He made the difference. And in the secondary, Verrett and Ward, it didn't matter if it was Emmanuel Mosley or if it was Dante Johnson on his 6th stint with the 49ers. It didn't matter because these guys are the ones that elevate the guys around them. And that's the big thing, which comes up to the earlier question, right? Like, if you look at the Niners roster, like, Nick Mullins playing the quarterback the exact same way he played it last season, which was really up and down, right? There were moments of good. There were throws that you said, okay, you can do this with Nick Mullins. And then he would throw a pick 6 and all of that. Well, if George Kittle and Debo are healthy, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter because they likely win those 3 games they lost in the NFC West that they shouldn't have lost. I mean, Washington couldn't move the ball an inch for an entire second half. Alex Smith had that shin issue. Dwayne Haskins was awful. Right, NFC East, excuse me. NFC East, right? They easily could have won that game. The Dallas game, 100% they should have won. Philly game, they should have won. And, the Philly game, they did have George Kittle healthy. They didn't have Debo. So if you have those two players really on their offense, the entire outlook of the Niners season has changed. And I think that's the biggest difference between these two football teams. I'm not going to call the Niners players injury prone because I've talked about it before and I don't want to be a hypocrite about it. I don't know what injury prone is. There's nothing that makes you more prone to getting injured than other players. But what I will say is that the Rams players have remained consistently healthy while the 49ers players have not. Like, if you could rely on George Kittle to play 16 games in a season, then, it doesn't matter if Ross Dwelly gets hurt, or it doesn't matter if, not Debo, but let's say whoever, if Kendrick Bourne, when he was here last year, if he got hurt, or, your right tackle goes down. Because what happened in 2019, Grant? When McGlinchey and Staley went down, Kittle was healthy. They were
was
still
healthy.
able to run the football. Juszczyk
Yep.
was healthy, or Juszczyk, got hurt. And without Juszczyk, Staley, and Mike McGlinchey, they had their best running performance of the season against Carolina.
That's true.
Why? George Kittle was healthy.
Exactly.
Debo was healthy.
Right.
So really, that's what the NFC West comes down to, right? And that's the thing with the Rams, right? And Seattle, same thing. Wagner and Russell Wilson play every single game, every single season. That's why, in spite of their roster constantly going through turmoil, in spite of them having a secondary right now that has Akella Witherspoon and DJ Reed, two guys that couldn't even start for the 2018 49ers as their starting cornerbacks, we look at them and say they're still going to be a playoff team because those two guys are going to play 16 games, and those two guys will make everything around them a lot better. And that's really the difference with the Rams, because to me, both of these teams are excellently coached, right? I think the Rams have a better quarterback for now, but I think the Niners have a better offensive line. I think the Niners have a better run game. Rams, I would maybe give the edge if you look at the overall receiving crew, but if you throw in the Niners tight ends, then to me, it's a little bit of a wash. I like the Niners' depth across their defense better than the Rams, but the big difference is the Rams' best players are going to play 17 games next season because that's just what they do. And so it doesn't matter when, they lose a Michael Brockers and stuff because they have guys who can play up to that level around Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. The Niners.
Also one more thing. I mean, not just on defense. The Rams have a quarterback now who's going to make other players better. He's going to make Cooper Kupp better. He's going to make Robert Woods better. He's going to make Cam Akers better. And Jimmy doesn't do that. That's one of the main reasons the Niners have Trey Lance. Jimmy doesn't do that. Jimmy's good when everyone else is there to make him better. Raheem Mostert, Debo Samuel, George Kittle, Trent Williams, the whole thing, Brandon Ayuk, they make him better. Although he's paid to make other players better, perhaps Trey Lance will make other players better. He could. And that's the upside there. That's what you need from your quarterback.
And if he does that, that changes this entire conversation, right? Because if he does that and he played 17 games every season, now the Niners' entire outlook doesn't become if they're healthy. It becomes they have Trey Lance. So even if they have 5 guys on their offense missing on a random Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals, they're still going to win that football game because they have Trey Lance. That's what Seattle has with Russell Wilson.
That's right. What do you think of this question here from Glenn Siaga? Hey, do you think Pittsburgh or Denver is a nice fit for Jimmy G? And another question, do you think Jimmy Ward will be utilized differently this season? First one, Jimmy G, Pittsburgh or Denver. What do you think?
I don't think so for either. I'm going to be honest. I don't think so at all.
He'd be better off in a dome, right?
Would he? You think so?
I don't think he has what Army used to have.
We saw Pittsburgh's frustration, right? Throwing the ball short all the time last year. And I still think Ben has a bigger arm than Jimmy. I just think he wasn't willing to uncork it the same way last year, coming off of an injury. And then
Jimmy should go to New Orleans. He should go to New Orleans. I don't know if Sean Payton would want him, but go play in the Superdome, throw a bunch of short passes to players like Michael Thomas.
Yeah,
but I don't think they want him.
And then Denver, Denver think they're paying Teddy Bridgewater peanuts. I understand that Jimmy's better than Teddy Bridgewater, but then it comes down to, is he better at $25 million than Teddy is at 3? I'd venture to say no. So personally, I don't think. And then in regards to do I think Jimmy Ward will be utilized differently this season, I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that DeMeco Ryans in his first year is going to change a bunch of the stuff that Robert Saleh was doing. Why would you? It's working. And you studied under him. He's your main influence.
Yeah, and 100%. And it goes back to, so this defense, Grant, we've talked about this a little bit on the phone, but this defense is really built to highlight the linebackers, right? They want the linebackers flying to the ball. They're a fast
easy assignments.
Because the linebackers
easy assignments for the linebackers.
They let their linebackers flow, and they keep things simple for them. What was DeMeco Ryans, the linebackers coach? He's not going to come in here and say, all right, we're going to highlight Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tartt, and we're going to feature them in our defense. No, he's going to stick to highlighting his linebackers.
That's true. Good call. Rick Holly says, what does Vish think about virtual training? Earlier today, my dad and I were talking about virtual reality, how the idea of virtual reality could actually help a quarterback train, how he could help him install plays, get him reps against different coverages, cover 2, cover 3, whatever you want, and saving wide receivers their legs, saving the rest of the team having to be out there repping it with them. It seems like this is something that NFL teams could use as the technology gets better. Thoughts?
I think that's brilliant. And I don't think I actually think it has a different use, not in terms of rep. I think so. Quarterbacks talk a lot about in their preparation for games. They're just mentally going through plays in their head and how they would progress through
visualizing
the plays based on how they get the look, right? They're visualizing in their head. This just makes that visualization a lot easier for them.
Yes, absolutely. You could install whatever defense that you're about to face on this program.
And you can go through every single thing. And
you can simulate, J.J. Watt against Mike McGlinchey and the pressure that's going to happen, or you know what I mean. All that stuff could be simulated. That would be really interesting, and I feel like it's going to happen. I would imagine this is stuff that the military already does, and the NFL is so lucrative, and it seems like they're always right there. Like, I don't know. Yeah. If I was invested, the thing that kills me is like you get the MLB, which doesn't make as much money as football, but they're so precious with their investments. They'll draft someone in the first round. They don't just throw them on the field and be like, yo, sink or swim, buddy. They'll put you in the minor leagues and nurture you up to the pros. The NFL, they put all this money and resources into quarterbacks, and they're like, all right, you got one off season, you got like 12 practices, and then we'll see what you got. It's like, okay.
And that's why I think quarterback development is so few and far between. Right. And that's why I don't think these guys even end up developing quarterbacks. I think they just make the job easier for quarterbacks. Yeah. Like look at Goff, right? Goff is the classic example. When between Fisher and McVay, we thought like the outlook was that McVay developed Goff. No, McVay didn't develop Goff. Goff still has the same problems he's always had. He struggles to process defenses. He's bad in the pocket. He's slow. He doesn't like bodies around him. McVay just made Goff's job a lot easier. And finally, it got to a point where as easy as he could make it, there was only so much he could do, and he kicked Goff to the curb.
Well, when you're paying a guy $34 million a year, you can't be dumbing things down. He needs to be expanding your offense and making other players better.
Yeah,
because the rest of the team isn't that great anymore.
And that's why, I think Josh Allen is really the only example we can go to when we say multiple year quarterback development, like the olden days. Like Watson was 19 touchdowns, 5 picks in 6 games as a rookie before he got hurt. Mahomes threw 50 touchdowns in his first year starting. 50 touchdowns, 50. All these guys. I mean, you could just go through the list. Baker Mayfield was good as a rookie. The system, the offensive line was bad. He was bad. Then you give him a better system, better offensive line. He's good again. To me, that's not development. He's just the same player in worse and better situations. So,
I got a question from Raymond Martinez Jr., big friend of the show. What's up, Raymond? Vish, can you articulate why or why not Jimmy should be given credit for the winning record he holds as the starting quarterback?
You want to take this or me? Because I feel like this is a topic that you're very –
I mean, to me, I always go back to Jared Goff. Like Jared Goff had a really good winning record, and then it kind of eroded in the last couple of years. He's been kind of a 500 mediocre quarterback. I think Jimmy's in the same trajectory. He started off 16-2. It's remarkable. He got a lot of luck. He had a lot of things going his way. He was a good player. He got hurt. Now he's 10-7. His last 17 starts, including the playoffs. So I don't see this guy who just has this magic ability to win anymore. I think that's kind of in the past.
Okay. So I'm firmly in the wins aren't a quarterback stat. But I think the important thing with Jimmy's winning record, and this is why I compare it to a guy like a Matthew Stafford, a guy I'm a big fan of, but you look at Matthew Stafford in Detroit. Jimmy won a lot of games where he played terrible. Just go through the 2019 season. He was awful in the Carolina game. They won that game by 40 points. He threw an ugly interception. He was not that great in that.
So a linebacker who was 10 feet in front of him, right? Kuechly? Right there. Yeah.
Predetermined read. Yeah. Looked right, came right back left, didn't even check where Kuechly was, threw it straight to him. All right. He threw 2 terrible interceptions versus Arizona. Did he come back and win them the game? Sure, he threw the ball on Jeff Wilson's helmet. That was a hell of a catch.
Oh, that was behind him. It was behind him.
But it was behind him. But you look at Stafford, right? In Detroit, if Stafford throws those 2 interceptions that Jimmy Garoppolo threw, goodbye to the game. Game's over.
Jimmy also struggled.
Lines aren't coming back. Jimmy was I was getting there. Jimmy was terrible against Tampa week 1. He was terrible. Pittsburgh game was rough. You can go down the list. And then how many losses can you really look at and say, wow, Jimmy Garoppolo was terrific, but the 49ers really couldn't get it done around him. I can't think of one, honestly. The Baltimore game, Jimmy, honestly, the touchdown he threw should have been a pick.
Right.
He didn't play well in that game.
No.
He killed the momentum in that game by fumbling in their own area, a fumble that didn't even need to happen. He was trying to stay up for what reason the play was dead. He had his 4th and 1 attempt batted down. Yep. The Falcons game, I mean, what throw did he make in the Falcons game that really changed the tide of that game? He throwing little flat routes to George Kittle the entire game?
Yeah.
So you look at that. Then the first Seattle game, sure, Kendrick Bourne dropped a few passes in that game, though I think that gets overrated by the fact that KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner dropped more passes than Kendrick Bourne in that game.
That's
and they play defense.
That's right. People forget that, but we don't.
So the point is, when you're looking at the winning record, right, and this is why, I bring up Stafford because he's the easiest example of this. I just showed you that the quarterback record is not indicative of how the quarterback played. This quarterback played bad in 5 games that he has a 5-0 record in. I could go down Matthew Stafford's career and show you 20 games where the guy just played as well as you could play and the Lions lost. Why is that Matthew Stafford's fault? And why is it to Jimmy's credit that his team was better and his team did more around him? Imagine
also, did he play well in New England this year when he won by a million points? No, he threw that ugly interception over the middle.
The Rams game.
He didn't throw the ball past the line of scrimmage in the Rams game and won.
No.
Yeah. That's where the Jimmy Gimme term was originated, the Rams game. The Jimmy Gimmies. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of things have propped Jimmy up. It's not like he makes players better. Although he did make Marquise Goodwin pretty good for a minute.
Yeah, but even that season, I feel like he played well. I'm not saying he didn't play well. I think maybe he got a little overhyped because the quarterbacks he replaced played so awfully that season.
Right.
But what I will say that's important, I think, is that even with the 2017, if you go back and look, honestly, it wasn't he didn't lose a game, right? But in their wins, it wasn't like he played like a quarterback that, just took the game over. He was up and down. He had a lot of ups. He had a lot of incredible throws. He also had a lot of interceptions at that point too. So you take the good with the bad.
I have a question to spring on you. I haven't prepped you on this one. I'm curious. Who do you think was a better quarterback? Peak Jimmy or peak Kaepernick?
You know where I'm going to go. I don't think it's very close. Pete Kaepernick, come on. Pete Kaepernick was great. Not just good. He was great.
He was really good.
Pete Kaepernick won playoff games by himself.
On the road.
The Packers game, playoff game, is the best performance I've seen from a 49ers quarterback. He was 17-0 down in the Georgia Dome, the loudest, craziest stadium in the NFL that season, and he brought them back from the pocket, something that teams didn't think he could do at the time, throwing lasers to Vernon Davis in that game, a guy who he didn't have chemistry with.
Okay. Who was better, peak Jimmy or peak Alex Smith? On the Niners. Smith? Peak Alex Smith on the Niners.
So I think the big difference is that Alex Smith played with Greg Roman, and that was the conductor of his passing game, and Jimmy got the benefit of Kyle Shanahan. Man. I think Alex might have been the better individual player because he's just so far ahead mentally compared to Jimmy, and he's so much more athletic than Jimmy.
Yeah.
Jimmy is maybe the better thrower.
Yes.
But I think that if you give Alex Kyle Shanahan scheming it up, I think Alex might throw 3 interceptions. If you give Alex the exact same 2019 season, I think he throws maybe 3 interceptions in that season.
And wins a Super Bowl. Thank you very much, Vish. I really appreciate you answering these questions on the spot. I didn't prep you for that. All right. Let's go to Jimmy Ward. This is a cool topic. Jimmy Ward is now figuring out that he needs to do a little self-promotion. He doesn't seem like a self-promoter, but he doesn't have that much time left in the league. He's 30. And he's playing like he's 25, and he needs some credit. And so what he's doing is pointing out that there is not a tight end in the league that he thinks could get more than 50 yards one-on-one against him in a game. Do you think he's right?
Yeah.
I do too.
I think he's right.
I do too.
I think this is one of those things, if you watch Jimmy Ward, this is the best man coverage safety in the NFL. It's bar none. This is the best man coverage safety in the NFL. He does every single thing that Tyrann Mathieu gets credited to doing. Jimmy Ward does every single one of those things as well, whether it's covering in the
He's a better athlete than Tyrann Mathieu.
At this point, I think so. And I think that the tight end thing, I think I would take it a step further. I think there's a lot of receivers that you could pick that are rated as very good receivers in the NFL that torch a lot of good cornerbacks that Jimmy Ward could keep under 50 yards. Just being sticky in man coverage, he might be the best. He might be better than Verrett, frankly. He might be the best individual man coverage defender on the 49ers. So I 100% agree with him.
Relative, like pound for pound. Like you couldn't put Jimmy Ward out at cornerback.
On like a Metcalf, no.
But yeah, position for position. Yeah, I'm with you.
Right.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And not to mention, like, I was on Twitter maybe a little too much this weekend when he posted this, and there was this stupid Dolphins fan who misdiagnosed the coverage on a 70-yard throw to Gesicki where the 49ers are playing split safety coverage, and he calls it cover one robber and says Jimmy Ward plays the post wrong. Probably one of the dumbest things I've ever seen, and he used it as an explanation to say why, Gesicki got X amount of yards on Jimmy Ward. Please.
No.
My God, when it comes to man coverage, this is, again, it's if you've watched it, you know it. This guy is incredible in man coverage. He is incredible in man coverage. Even the game that people, I think, really hold against him, one of Kaepernick's worst games, frankly, is a 49er.
I was waiting, but I was going to go there.
The Levi opener versus Brandon Marshall. If you actually take the time to go back and watch that game, really what happens is Ward is in as good of a position as you can get. Sometimes if you throw a good ball to a 6'5" guy with good ball placement, or he can reach back behind him and make a one-handed catch, there's really nothing the DB can do but get baptized at the catch point. Brandon Marshall is an almost Hall of Fame receiver.
Right. So this is what I wanted to say. I'm with Jimmy on the 50 yards. I think he would not give up 50 yards. He's right there in the guy's hip pocket every time.
You think he might give up touchdowns?
But that was the only thing I wanted to say. And the only thing is, if I were a defensive coordinator and I'm facing the Bucks and they split out Rob Gronkowski, at wide receiver at the 4-yard line, and they're going to the back shoulder fade, or the Chiefs with Kelsey. There's any number, the Raiders with Waller. I just wouldn't necessarily put Ward in that matchup. I would rather have Tart in that matchup, just in that one specific way. So that's nothing against Ward. That's how I would use him. So yeah, I think Ward's right on with this. And really, it's probably more on Fangio for using him in that specific way in the red zone. It's like it's a bad matchup.
I mean, it's a tough matchup for a rookie. It's a tough matchup for a rookie. Yeah, I don't know why people were so ready to write him off after that one game. I mean, people are still not ready to write off certain guys.
It's because he was a first-round pick. If a first-round pick doesn't have a splash right away, like if Trey Lance's first game is bad, people are going to lose their minds. But if it's a good game, people are going to say he's the greatest quarterback of all time.
You really think so?
There's a very much an overreaction culture in the NFL.
I don't think so, because I remember people defending Solomon Thomas hard for 2-3 years before.
Yeah, but Solomon Thomas was doing nothing. Jimmy Ward got beat. It feels different. It looks different. You know what I mean? It's like, did Solomon Thomas play today? I don't know. I didn't see him out there, but maybe PFF said something good about him. I don't
know. Wait. He had the offsides penalty against Week 1 versus the Vikings when all he had to do was not jump off sides and the Niners get the ball back, but he jumped off sides. Oh yeah, there's Solomon Thomas.
All right, let's move on. Joe Staley went on the radio this morning. We talked about this on Twitter, but it's worth talking about from different perspectives. Staley isn't on the team anymore. So when he goes and says that he's still upset about the loss, obviously, and he's bitter because he says that Nick Bosa got held a bunch of times and the refs didn't call it. I went on with my dad earlier and was like, man, get over it. This is indicative of the team's inability to move on and deal with reality. But let's just talk about Joe, who's not on the team anymore. What do you think of Joe saying this stuff?
So the first thing is I saw you tweet about it. So the reason I wanted to talk about it is because I saw your tweets this morning. First time I went on Twitter, first thing I see is you making some, sarcastic jokes about the Niners in 2019. And I was like, oh God, who said what? Please don't be Mike McGlinchey who said something. And I saw it was Joe Staley, and I was a little shocked. Like, wow, Joe Staley said that. So my first reaction was, well, Grant, you're wrong, because guess what? Joe Staley doesn't have to get over it because he doesn't have to play football next year or the year after that. So he can stay lingering now. It might not be the most healthiest thing to do. So maybe you were just looking out for his health. Like, Joe, if you move on, you might feel a little better mentally. You might have a little angst taken off you. But Joe Staley seems to look great. Everything seems to be working well for him in life. He's giving Kyle Shanahan big hugs after roof-to-roof 40-yard throws. So I guess he's doing okay. But my second reaction was, this is actually something I personally like from athletes. I think oftentimes the expectation from athletes and the way we kill athletes for certain honest reactions is a little extra. Like Cam Newton after the Super Bowl got destroyed. But really, what I respected from Cam Newton was, wow, Cam Newton had the real raw emotion of just losing the Super Bowl. And he is human. Like, he didn't just come out and give PC answers. He is human.
And he was
you
a
can
kid
see
too,
how much it affected him. Right. And so and he took Philly Brown and Jericho Cotchery to the Super Bowl. That itself,
he did. There was no one on that team though. On his offense.
And just going back to Staley, like I think too often we expect athletes to always have the CEO answer, but we also expect them to be so competitive that they invest their entire life into a sport. And then once you invest your entire life in the sport, 20 minutes later, you're not supposed to be emotional about it. You're supposed to immediately give the correct answers. I actually appreciated Joe Staley reacting the way, 12-year-old, all of us would have reacted after, or all of us would have reacted after losing something, or whatever sport we played, coming home, being salty, complaining about the refs with the team, saying some snarky comment to your teammates about the referee, blaming the referee, all those things. Like, those are natural human reactions to losing in something that you're invested in and you're competitive about and you want to do. And I actually enjoy watching players give these reactions because I think it humanizes them. It makes more sense for Joe Staley to react like this than it does for Joe Staley to come out and say, we just didn't do enough. We should have been better. I should have been better. All of that, because
that's what the head coach says.
Even the head coach, honest to God, like, that's why sometimes McVay comes across as a little disingenuous to me, because there's no way your first reaction can be this, just, I was all wrong. I was the worst. I'm this bad. Because there's no way you could have internalized the game that much by then. That's why a lot of coaches, when I played soccer, two coaches I had this thing called the 24-hour rule. After the game, you don't get to discuss the game with them or you or anything about the game until 24 hours after, because they wanted you to not be emotional and reflect and really look at the game and be like, okay, how did I play? What are the things I did? What are the things I did? And especially because soccer is a lot more tactical game than people realize. So basically, I think our coach, what he really wanted us to do was think about, tactically why you were using certain positions, why you were asked to do these things. And then did it make sense? And did you play well within that confine? And that way you can also have a better understanding and, a better acknowledgement for the coach and what he had to go through and all of that. And I think that 24-hour rule should exist in football. Unfortunately, they have a 15-minute rule and they shove a mic right into your face right after the loss. And I respect the hell out of every athlete who comes out and lie. I think they're frankly lying because I don't think they feel like it's all my fault. We should have been better, all of that. And so I actually personally really enjoyed this view of real raw emotion from Joe Staley, because to me, it humanizes him.
Sure. And I think when I was I wasn't criticizing him. I said this is basically indicative of the Niners viewpoint. And to me, that's a problem. But he's off in his own world. He retired. And it reminded me of his career arc. And I think it's fair to say that his career, there was a tragic element to his career. It was a success. He's a borderline Hall of Fame player. He probably won't make the Hall of Fame, but he'll be in the Niners Hall of Fame. He could say he's the best left tackle they've had since Bob St. Clair played right tackle. He could be the best left tackle the Niners have ever had. And that's a great career. But he was in 2 Super Bowls. And he should feel like he should have 2 rings. I mean, they were right there both times. And the second time, I mean, I could see him. It's so painful, him saying, if it wasn't just for this one call or these few calls, I would have a ring right now. And it's got to be from that perspective, it's a tragic end to his career. That was the last game he played, Vish.
Yeah. And I think there's another aspect of tragedy to his career that you and I talked about earlier on the phone. And it's the aspect of, to me, Joe Staley has been appreciated more in the last year and a half when he didn't play for the 49ers than the 13 years he did play for the 49ers. I think a lot of people forget that. If you look at the beginning of Joe Staley's career, if you remember, a lot of people wanted him gone in 2009, 2010. When they extended him, I think they extended him in 2010. It was premature. Trent Baalke extended him. He said he's playing like one of the best left tackles in the NFL.
I think it was 2011. I think it was my first year on the beat. And I remember thinking,
a lot of people were upset about it. A lot of people were upset about it. They said, why should you pay him? And that 2011 to 2014 run, even though Joe Staley was the best player on the offensive line, he was not regarded as the best player on the offensive line. Mike Upati was regarded as the best player on the offensive line. He was a poor pass blocker. And it goes beyond that. When people were salty, because one of the biggest reasons the Niners chose not to pay Mike Upati, if you remember, is because it didn't make sense in terms of the financial structure of the roster. Joe Staley never asked for a new contract or never asked for a new extension, in spite of outplaying his current contract throughout that entire 2011 to 2014 run. So he was paid like a mid-tier left tackle, even though he was playing like an elite level left tackle. Mike Upati was going to get paid like a high level guard, which would mean that he would get paid more than Joe Staley. And I don't think the Niners were ready to do that. That's my probably biggest guess on why they didn't want to pay Upati. I don't think they wanted to pay Upati more money than they paid Joe Staley, because Joe Staley was the linchpin of that offensive line. He was the left tackle. So then Mike Upati, walks, and a lot of people were salty about that. Then Joe Staley, the peak of his career, the prime of his career, really the best years of his career, the Niners were not a good football team, so he didn't get appreciated then. Then I thought the leadership aspect of Joe Staley was interesting, honestly, because nobody ever did portray Joe Staley as the leader of this football team when he was on this football team. No one ever did. I think that's what was shocking to me when everyone said, oh, he's such a big loss, his leadership is such a big loss, because we never got to see that Joe Staley was the leader of this football team. I think, Frank Gore was portrayed as a leader. Vernon Davis portrayed himself as a leader. There were a lot of different guys, Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, but Joe Staley was never really looked at as that figure. I mean, personally, I just looked at him as a cool guy that everybody liked, that did the Joe Show and all of that. And then you realize what a leadership impact he had on this team the year after he retires. And everybody talks about how impactful he was as a leader and everything. So I think that his career in that sense is just tragic, because he's just a guy that never got the appreciation he truly deserved. And I think we were all wrong, honestly, for not giving him that appreciation, because like you said, he's the greatest left tackle in 49ers history.
Also, if he had those 2 rings, he'd probably have a stronger case to be in the actual Hall of Fame. And also the other thing that I think so. If you two rings, you might be looked at a little differently, because a lot of people have to go to the Hall of Fame from a guy from those teams. But the other thing that I wanted to say about him is that he made $90 million in his career from the 49ers, and Jimmy's made 87. So that's too bad. That's
okay. I saw the mischievous look on your face as your arms came up to look up something.
I was like, how much money did the Niners pay Joe? Oh, almost just a little bit more than they've paid Jimmy Garoppolo. That's wrong. That's wrong. They should have paid Joe Staley more. Oh, well, at least they're letting him hang out with their coach, so that's cool. All right, last topic we got for the day. Wait, was there something? No, yeah, last topic. Hold on. We talk about this every 2-3 weeks, trying to implore the Niners to do something with Fred Warner. They don't do nothing. No news on Fred Warner. Nothing to report. Radio silence. What do you think, Vish?
Yeah. So the first thing I wanted to address with this is I was, peeping the comment section the last time we did this. I always see the live comments, and a lot of people were like, oh, how do you know they're not working on it? How do you know they're not working on it? The reason I know they're not working on it is because they would tell us if they were working on a Fred Warner extension. Why? Because the best PR for this football team throughout this offseason is 2 things. 1, it's to make Trey Lance look good. And 2, the other thing is to look like they're doing every single thing they can to sign Fred Warner as fast as possible for as much money as possible. That's really the best PR this organization is going to get this offseason outside of Trey Lance looking good. That's why I would know, because the moment the talk starts with Fred Warner, I promise all the Niners have entered talks with Fred Warner will be reported by maybe not, Adam Schefter, because that guy thought it was going to be Mac Jones. He was making stuff up, but maybe I'm trying to think which reporters are credible. No, I'm joking. But no, you thought it was Mac Jones with me for a little bit, Grant.
That's true. I'm negated because
you picked Mac Jones in the SI mock draft. I'm not letting you get away with this one.
I tried to put Kyle Pitts down originally. They wouldn't let me do it.
So I'm joking. I'm really just joking. I'm really being salty and facetious about it. Really, it's not a big deal. That's a little besides the point. But the point to me is I promise that people will report on it, because signing Fred Warner is a big deal for this organization. Talking to Fred Warner about his contract is a big deal. Because honestly, the outlook of Fred Warner should be that he's the franchise player of this organization. He's the best in front of the media. He always says the right things. He plays every single game. He plays an elite level. Everything about Fred Warner to me is exactly what you're looking for. So, yeah, I just look at it and say that there's no way they wouldn't be saying, there's no way they would be having talks in secret. Like, you have talks in secret when you're about to trade DeForest Buckner. You have talks in public when you're about to sign DeForest Buckner. There's a difference.
Now, the other thing I want to say is they haven't signed Trey Lance either or Sermon. So it's possible that all these things will get wrapped up right at the deadline, day of camp, reporting day. But if these things, I mean, I'm 100% expecting the 2 Treys to sign the day camp starts, which means maybe the Niners are like, we'll just do that with Fred Warner that day too. If not, if this lingers into training camp, it's a problem and it's an issue and something to talk about. That's what I'm going to frame it that way.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the Niners are like, we got these other 2 things we're going to handle. We're just going to sign a bunch of people on report day at the end of July or whatever.
So I think that the season, is the time where you should start worrying, because I think the thing with him is I think he'll end up showing up for training camp, going through everything, being the leader of the football team that he is. So you won't feel that added pressure. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sure George Kittle would have come and showed up, to training camp without a new deal.
Yeah.
If things were as contentious as they reportedly were, which Mike Silver wrote an entire essay on it.
Right.
If you remember,
also,
you were mentioning that.
All the urgency and all the reports last year with Kittle were coming from Kittle's side. How do I know? So, and if you're saying there's more urgency there with Kittle than there last year than there would be this year with Warner. Maybe Warner's side is just saying, we're not going to call up Mike Silver, anyone from NFL Network. We're going to let the Niners take as much time, and if they want to mess around, then that's their problem.
Yeah, the one thing that makes me a little bit scared is that, correct me if I'm wrong, is Fred Warner's agent David Mulligetta?
I don't know. Let me see. I'll tell you right now. Right, because that's Deshaun Watson's
agent, Jalen Ramsey's agent.
Just a second. I'll tell you right now. No, it's someone named Justin Schulman. Athletes First.
Athletes First is David Mulligetta, I think.
Oh, okay.
Well, the thing that worries me is let me just make sure of this just in case. Yeah, so he is Athletes First. What worries me with that is they've engineered a lot of 2 first-round pick trades for their star clients. Jalen Ramsey. They're trying to engineer with Deshaun Watson, all of that. Now, Fred Warner clearly wants to stay in all of that, so I'm not saying that. But I would like to know that, for my personal just superstitions and worries as a fan, that, they're progressing on this so that I can feel a little bit happy because, again, I'm a fan. So I want Fred Warner to be on this football team for every year he's in the NFL. He's like that kind of player. He's the kind of player you want on your team. He's the kind of player you cheer for. So I would like it to happen. I mean, if you remember, actually, like the Trey Lance deal, you and I actually had a phone call after the draft, I think, where we talked about how Trey Lance deal might take a little bit of time to get done with the details, because Trey Lance's agent is Jimmy Sexton, the biggest or one of the biggest quarterback agents out there, and he's not going to move a little bit for his client. And the way the Niners usually do things is they win on the details. Parag always wins on the details. But, I mean, I don't know. I hate that there's no updates. Let me just put it that way. All I need is for there to be some updates.
Bora A over here is saying, Grant, there was news that they have started contract negotiations. Oh, word? Who reported that?
It was reported by a couple people that I'm not going to say they don't have sources because I don't know those things. Right. I'm just going to say that I would also like for
someone reputable, someone at the NFL Network or Adam Schefter or me. So that's the way we'll be monitoring this. This should really be wrapped up in the next 3 weeks. I mean, they report in like 3 weeks. So yeah, be interesting to see if they can wrap this up.
Honest to God, I don't even think the rookie contract thing is really even that much of an excuse to not be working on it, because to me, the inner workings of the rookie contract, there's only so many things you can talk about because so much of the contract is pre-structured.
That's right. All right, we got to end the show now because I'm going live again in 20 minutes with Jack Hammer. We're going to be talking about N'Keal Harry, things like that. Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers. Vish, thanks for making some time on a Tuesday. I appreciate it, man. The people,
Thank you.
Popular demand, Warriors World.
We'll be back.
World, really. Yeah, thank you, Warriors World, for making.
Too.
Yeah, we'll be back. I'm going to be on his channel later this week.
We are.
I'm going to be doing a lot of
Cohn and Vish Sports. Come in if you can.
That's right. All right, guys. See you guys in 20 minutes. Later.